Thank you to our speakers. It's my pleasure to chair this session at Megatrends. Al pointed out also it's not just my pleasure but my contractual obligation to do that, and I'm delighted to take up that offer. A few opening remarks before we move on to our speakers, and we'll hear their opening thoughts before taking questions either from the floor, old school, or with the marvellous Slido device. Where to start on connectivity? Well, perhaps with the late lamented Stephen Hawking, who memorably observed, "We're all now connected to the internet like neurons in a giant brain." Well, most passengers simply won't fly without connectivity. It's an aircraft on ground event, whether for communications, for family, for business, whatever. It's a must-have. And some people will even reroute aircraft to stay in that happy zone of connectivity. And we've heard a bit about connectivity from the previous speaker and also from Michael Al-Malfitano, who talked about millennials always being on, always switched on. So in this session, we're going to look at the future of connectivity, why it's become so important, where it's going. We'll probably touch on virtual reality and augmented reality. And now I'm going to introduce the speakers. On the far extreme there is Jared Maynard, Aircraft Resales Manager from Satcom Direct. We've got Gregg Malakoff, Senior Channel Sales Director, Americas Intelsat. Bill Rowett, Technical Sales Manager, Inmarsat. James Pearson, Senior Director, Global Business Development and WIP, Viasat. Lupita Wilson, who's had a bit of a monster journey to get here, only from Dallas, but even so, thank you for making that journey. Cabin Marketing Manager, Collins Aerospace. And last but not least, Jim Zanino from Senior Director, Global Sales, Gogo Business Aviation. Jim, can we start with you with a few opening thoughts over 2 minutes on where we are with connectivity?
So if you take a look at where we are right now with connectivity, for the most part, anything you could do at your house, you could do on an airplane now. The newer systems we have out there had the speeds to stream video, multiple streams of video. You could play games on it. You could do video conferencing. You can make phone calls. So you pretty much have the same capabilities that you have at your house, which is great because a lot of people's expectation now is when you get on an airplane that you could do what you do at your house. So we've really made that big leap over the last 4 or 5 years with the newer systems that are out there. What you're seeing, though, is that's great if you own a very large aircraft and you can stick the antenna on top of the aircraft. So if you have a smaller cabin aircraft where you don't have a tail-mounted antenna, it's a little hard to do that unless you're in the U.S. where we have the air-to-ground network. If you're a global company and you want to go to some of these other locations, it's not quite there yet. Europe's close with their system. They have it running for the airlines. I think Inmarsat will be having it soon for the business aircraft as well. I think one of the big game changers probably going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years is you have all these low Earth orbit satellites that are going up from SpaceX with their Starlink, OneWeb, Amazon's got their system as well. Since those satellites are a lot closer to the Earth, you're going to be able to have smaller antennas to stick on these smaller aircraft, and you'll have that same capability in the smaller aircraft. So you'll probably see that in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those brief comments. Jim.
Thanks, Mike. I'll start with a little bit of background on Viasat for people in the audience who aren't familiar with us. So we're a California-based provider of high-speed connectivity for those aircraft that Jim was talking about that can't accommodate a tailman antenna. So we're talking about mid-cabin aircraft, super mids, large cabin, and long-range aircraft. We service the business aviation market with global KU service and our own high-speed Ka-band service. And we're an integrated provider in that we make the hardware that goes on the aircraft as well. So we design and have our own satellites launched, and we put our own chipsets on the aircraft. To answer your question, Mike, about where we are, I'd still say in some ways we're at the beginning of the market. It's still relatively immature, with an example being that I think operators and sometimes brokers will check the box for the lowest cost solution to say, okay, I have Wi-Fi in the aircraft. But people are getting a little more sophisticated about, well, what does that mean? Is that something I'm going to pay by the megabyte and it only gives me a couple hundred kilobits per second? Or is it 15 or 16 megabits per second now going faster in the future, but I can fully stream and do what we're talking about and do everything you'd expect to be able to do in your home office.
So that immaturity presumably adds up to market opportunity for you guys.
I'd say there's some truth in that, yes. So I think that's where we are today.
Okay, thank you for that. Lupita.
Well, at Collins Aerospace, we look at connectivity not just as the only thing that defines the customer experience or the passenger experience or the owner experience, but really also look at the avionics from the cockpit for the pilot, as well as the lights, the seats, as Michelle mentioned earlier, and the cabin entertainment system that goes in the cabin for the passenger. Fortunately for Collins Aerospace, we have all those solutions in our portfolio that helps the OEMs or our customers that wanting to do retrofits to change that experience. But from a connectivity standpoint, I think connectivity is becoming a commodity. There are so many choices out in the market today for the owners to select from, and that's a great thing. It's a wonderful thing because now they have a choice, and the choices allows them to have the speed globally that they have in the ground, in the air. So it's fantastic that they have this opportunity nowadays. I think we're at a phase where technology mixed with digital transformation as well as data is changing the way it's shaping the way how the future of the connected ecosystem is going to be on an aircraft.
Okay, thank you for that. Bill.
Good morning, everybody. At Inmarsat, we're a little bit different in that I have competitors on the stage up here. I also have partners on the stage up here. So we own and operate actually the satellite constellation and the ground network that we've been in business for 40 years. And during that time, we started out all those many years ago as International Maritime Satellite, hence the name Inmarsat. And we've grown since then into aviation, been in that for about 30 years now. And the first aviation product we bought for connectivity was a whopping 2.4 kilobits per second. So if you remember your 2800 baud modem, that's about where we were. We jumped then into 64 kilobits per second, 128 kilobits per second. Brought a product called Swift Broadband. It was 432 kilobits per second. And just over 3 years ago, we launched a product. Now, as James has mentioned, you can get up as high as 15 to 20 megabits per second. So connectivity's come a long way in the last 40 years, and it's got a long way to go in the next 40 years.
Good. We'll explore that in this session, so thank you for that. Yes, can you share your thoughts, please?
Sure. So Intelsat, we've actually been in the communications business since 1965 when we put up our first satellite. So we've been around a long time in the satellite communication business. Fairly new to the business jet market, but we've been doing aircraft and maritime and all the other segments for a long time. I think with regards to business aviation, I think we're just really scratching the surface here. Yeah. We've gone a long way from just phone calls and texting to having that office experience in the air. But I think there's a lot more to come. We're going to see more coverage and more bandwidth and more capability out there. We're going to see new technologies that will allow us to get terminals on smaller mid-sized jets so they can have the global high-speed bandwidth experience that large jets have today. And I think we're going to see smarter jets with the ability for the jet to communicate real-time to the flight departments, lowering overall operational costs. So there's great things already and more to come.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for those brief comments. And now on to Jared.
Thank you. So short and sweet. I guess three major takeaways that I would say for the audience. Number one, cybersecurity, a massive shift in awareness since last year that we were up here. I would say when we go to start that conversation, we used to have to start it with our customers last year. This year, probably 8 out of 10 are coming to us and saying, you know, they're actually starting it here. So that shift, that idea that everything that we do in our daily lives, from security, from privacy, that's starting to move into aviation and all these other different industries. So we're seeing a massive shift in that. Number two, usage. They're talking about all these faster speeds and everything. We have a really rapid rise in installation rates for all these new systems. And so with that usage, we're seeing easily quadrupling as far as the amount of data that these customers are using. And so with that, it kind of shifts away from, without speed as a constraint, what else can we do with those pipes on the airplanes? Whether it be the data that we're offloading, whether it be other, different things that they can do in there. So that's another interest. And then I'd say last is that we can't ignore the progress that's going to happen over the next 5 years. We got billions and billions and billions of dollars that are going up in the air, thousands of satellites, and so we really kind of have to think about how that's going to change this landscape. if we look at mobility as a whole, aviation is a core strategy in all of those different pieces. So that's worth looking forward to as well.
Okay, Jared, thank you for that. So don't forget, you can ask questions at any time using the wondrous Slido device, or you can put your hands up and ask them old school style. Let's start off with perhaps a consideration of what's driving connectivity. What is the real engine of growth for this? It's been around a while, but as we've just noted, it's perhaps gaining a traction now that it's not had before. Jared, could you give us your view on what's driving this connectivity train?
I guess from my perspective, if everybody in the audience thinks about could they really do with not picking up their phone for maybe 3 or 4 hours? And before that was not a big question, but now it really is. That they need to be connected, that they're checking emails, that they're doing all these different things. So it's almost this urge that we have to be connected, and that translates right into the airplane. I think in the back of the planes, even in the front now, everything that we're doing in our normal daily lives, at the office, at home, that's translating there as well. So that same urge that we have to check our email is pushing that.
Gregg, do you think that millennials are a factor here, or are they not too a significant player in the market to make much difference yet?
I think they will be. I think what's really driving connectivity and what's driving the growth is there are more options now. There are more rate plans now. Or the old L-band days, you didn't have a lot of choice. Yeah. Now there's some more choices that's driving awareness and to solve more problems and really make the jet a truly productive experience.
Okay, Phil, would you share that?
Pretty much the same answer. What's driving connectivity is because we can. And simply, it's there. And as you mentioned, it's there and it's getting better. And the business jet is really two things. It's a productivity tool or an enhancement of productivity. And then if you're not the boss flying the corporate jet, then it's a family jet perhaps that you've got to keep those kids and grandkids entertained. And of course, connectivity brings all of that to the table.
Yeah. Lupita.
Absolutely. Choices in the market, and the speeds are at a place where they can actually do what they do in the ground in the air. I mean, prior to a few years ago, the speed was not there. And that's why a lot of the connectivity was not picked up on a lot of the private business jets. And with speed and availability comes more competitive pricing. So pricing, availability, and the need from, to stay productive in the aircraft.
Okay, James.
If I were to give a one-word answer, I'd say video. You can't launch your favorite sports website, ESPN or whatever it is, or your favorite news site without getting some embedded video, let alone what's happening with FaceTime and video conferencing for work and every other kind of video that people are doing, either for streaming Netflix in an aircraft. Whatever they're doing, video is really driving the bulk of the volume of data that's being used in aircraft now, whether it's our commercial airline customers, even our government customers, and certainly our BizJet customers.
Jim, how important do you think video is?
It's very important. That's one of the biggest requests we got. It was when we developed one of our products for the U.S. market, was because they wanted to be able to stream video and do video conferencing. As well as all the stuff we're talking about in the cabin, the other thing that's driving a lot as well is that there's a lot of sensors on the airplane, like thousands upon thousands of sensors on every airplane that's out there. Getting the data off that airplane real time down to for the engines, for where the airplane is. All that information that could be used by the manufacturers for safety, so you know where the airplane is, so you don't have another Malaysia where the airplane disappears, no one knows where it is. All that stuff is coming off the aircraft now. So you're going to see more and more of that over the next couple of years as the engine manufacturers, the aircraft manufacturers work together to use the pipes that we're putting on the aircraft to get the data up.
It's coming from the OEMs rather than the customers actually and owners on the plane.
It's actually both. It's because if you own an airplane, your engine's probably one of your highest expenses on that. If you'd be able to know how your engine's performing, you can do predictive maintenance and save money instead of having failure or downtime. So there's a lot of things that the airline's been doing this for years, and we've been working with Delta, who's one of our biggest partners, on this, and they've really brought down their maintenance costs dramatically by using these systems.
Yeah. What do you think the most exciting areas will be to explore in the next 5 or so years? Is it augmented reality, virtual reality, or are those niche areas? Point us towards the money. Where is it going to develop?
The VR on an airplane, I still couldn't figure out how that's going to really play out. It's more just, I can see maybe during design, but not while you're actually flying. Augmented reality, like the video they showed this morning from Embraer, where the kids are watching and all the things are popping up, that could be kind of cool. We've done experiments with Japan Airlines with that. I don't think there's a lot of money to be made in that. I think it's more just a kind of fun thing, a little additional thing. I think the money's going to be in, like I said, the data, collecting the data off the aircraft, and then tracking what's going on with the aircraft.
Yeah, okay. Do you think that's right? Do you think it's data that is the key? Data's the new oil, they say.
The operational, hello? Can anybody hear me?
Sorry.
Getting the operational data off the aircraft is important, but in terms of volume, that's not what's driving the volume. It's probably still going to be what happens in the back that drives the volume, but interestingly, that operational data, whether it's engine, APUs, other systems that need to get off in real time, they can actually subsidize the services of what people experience in the cabin. And I saw a question come up already, do you see prices come down? That's a way that the price that the people in the back of the aircraft or the operators pay could come down is if it's subsidized by the operational data.
Okay, thank you for that. Lupita, what's going to be hot in the next 5-10 years in connectivity? Is it the general, are there any particular areas that stand out, or is it just the piece of connectivity?
I think in the next 5 years, you're really looking at the next satellite that's coming in, like the LEOs on OneWeb, and enabling that smaller antenna on smaller aircrafts, and having that cost of the connectivity really low, so that almost every aircraft has capability to put that antenna in there. And that's going to drive a lot of the utilization and being able to, do a lot of the, like we talk about augmented reality, that if it is, it's a total possibility once you get the pipe available. So technology, along with data, I think it's a crucial thing that's going to happen in the next 5 years that's going to transform the industry. Yeah.
Bill, where do you think the hot areas are?
I agree with Lupita 100%. I think that you'll see, are we working? I think that you'll see.
I'm not sure that's working. Perhaps try.
Oh my goodness. I think that you'll see that as technology continues to advance, even with Inmarsat in the next 4 years, that we're going to put up new satellites that are much more efficient, have much higher capacity than our entire network that we have today, that they're going to be more production build, so that means they'll be cheaper, which I saw those things come up as well, that you'll see costs go down, you'll see new technology in the terminals that are built by our value-added manufacturers.
What do you think more efficient satellite technology will look like?
Actually, what we'll offer in our Aviation GX 789 satellites, which are going up in 2 years' time, that you'll see directed spot beams. So rather than just shoot beams all over part of the globe, we'll be able to now, through dynamic beamforming, identify exactly where those beams need to be, when they need to be there, so you'll get the connectivity that you demand when you demand it.
Yeah. Great. What's your perspective on?
So I agree with a lot of that. Our next generation satellites are what they call software defined, so you can address the demand dynamically, and that's going to make a real big difference. Getting the terminals on the smaller aircraft, really opening up that market, that's, I think, where a lot of the growth is going to be. And wider coverage. As we're going to see more satellites deployed and this greater technology, we're going to see more of the globe covered. And that's just going to open up new markets.
Okay. Jared?
So next stuff, I would say from our side, it's everything that we can do with that pipe, all the data that's coming through. So obviously the LEOs, all these different aircraft, what does that mean? It means that there's larger markets for us to serve with this connectivity. It means that there's smaller jets that have those systems. It means that there's better coverage. All these folks that weren't flying that didn't have connectivity before now have that. So then it's what do we do with it? So a lot of our focus, I would say, over the next several years is going to be taking that data off the aircraft, not just video and internet and the things that they're doing, but then what can we do with those times, the cycles, the health data that's reporting off of different pieces, and then how can we automate that in the other end to ultimately save time. And there's a lot of silos within aviation. And if we can connect those with that data, have them communicate with each other and eliminate that duplication of effort, that's probably the greatest strides that we can get quickly.
Okay. Right, so a selection of Slido questions have now come up. Let's dive into Slido. We talked about pricing earlier, but let's focus on that now. To what extent will expanded network coverage bring down prices?
It's always supply and demand. So as more and more satellites go up, There'll be more actually bandwidth up there, so hopefully the prices will go down. But at the same time, the demand for those bandwidth is also going up. Each year, more and more apps, more and more applications require more bandwidth to run. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg thing. You're kind of balancing the two, supply and demand. Hopefully it'll go down in the long run, but at the same time, I mean, you only have so much satellite space out there, even with the new satellites. And if we're using all that demand, there's not much we can do with the pricing at this point.
James, are you confident prices will come down?
I like to use...
Do you want to see them come down? Presumably not.
I like to use a cell phone analogy. If, like me, you had a cell phone back in the 90s, it had voice capability and maybe did text, and you probably paid around $40 a month for that. And today, if you have an LTE 4G phone, you probably pay, or your company pays about $40 a month for that, and you get a computer in your pocket and a couple gigabytes per month of service, and you can stream on it, so much more capable. The way that applies in business aviation is a decade or more ago on a large cabin Gulfstream aircraft, you could have our top-of-the-line service, which offered 1.5 megabits per second. Now, if you buy a new Praetor 600, Mike Amalfitano's company will put Viasat on it, and it offers 16 megabits per second for less money than what the Gulfstream operator was paying, 2 decades ago.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Lupita?
Totally agree. I mean, we recently launched a new service to the market at 25 megabits per second. And you look at the pricing structure of that, because the satellite provider that we're using has one of the latest satellites in the market, and like all new satellites, it can be more optimized in the air. So that optimization will help reduce some of the costs, pricing costs to our customers. So absolutely, I think with new satellites coming in and more competition, it will bring the pricing down.
Bill, do you share?
No free lunch except what's coming up here in about an hour. That things have to be paid for, but I think you'll see that in the airlines today, some of the airlines that are using Inmarsat services now do offer free because they're able to monetize that some other way. In the business jet market, that's only going to come when we have a truly connected aircraft, and there's going to be financial advantage to OEMs and operators and maintainers that they'll get information off the aircraft. But becomes what's really important, more than the price coming down, is the value of the services provided.
Great.
Yeah, I think there'll be a little bit of downward pricing pressure, as there is with any technology over time, but it's not so much about pricing, but productivity and what you can do with it, and where's the value. Not all bandwidth is the same, and not all requirements are the same. So there's bandwidth if you're a different kind of user, that's going to be lower cost, and bandwidth if you're a heavy user, it's going to be higher cost. Then again, it's all about the value you're delivering and the value the customer gets.
So would it be a mistake to put too much emphasis on potentially lower prices?
Absolutely, because this is a business tool. This is what provides. I mean, aircraft don't fly if it's not working.
Yeah.
So that tells me there's a value here beyond price.
Yeah. Gary?
I think prices already have come down. I mean, if you look at a few years ago, they were paying $70 per megabyte. Now they're paying less than 50%. So those prices have gone down. I think we also have to look at the cost of it based on what that operator is and what they're flying. So, I'm thinking of James. Viasat just doubled their speeds and reduced prices on those. So those are all competition, marketplace maneuvers, things that are going on. And so for a lot of those larger operators, they're paying a lot less than they were just a short time ago. As we look down, it seems more expensive for some of those smaller operators. So I think that's kind of a subset of the marketplace that they have to address and say, okay, what makes sense for them as far as pricing? And we've already seen hints on that where pay for what you use, power by the hour, things like that, where it's not these huge monthly fees, and we're just saying, hey, we have this network, you can join that and pay as you go. So I think that is a natural shift in the market that's going to help it be fair to all these different sizes, and what's good for the little guys is not necessarily big for the big guys that are flying all over the world.
Okay, thank you. So I want to move on to pricing to cybersecurity, a topic that gets an awful lot of attention. And we have a Slido question on how is the team addressing data hacking in that particular area? Perhaps you'd like to start with.
Yeah, so... This one working? No, this one's not working. Hello? Hello? All right, this one's on.
That's good.
All right. The way we kind of do it at Gogo, our systems, we actually own our network from top to bottom, so we control the whole aspect of it, and we go through multiple monthly audits on cybersecurity where we have outside agencies come in and hack in, or try to hack into our network. So for the most part, since we own our network, we can maintain the structural integrity of it and the security of it. It's using the latest technology you see in your banking that you guys use on your phones. It's so funny that people talk about this in the airplane sense, but how many of you right now are checking your banking and all your stuff on your phone right here in this wide open Wi-Fi network? So it's kind of like interesting when you guys compared it to. It's like you do all the stuff you do in a hotel room, at an airport, all that stuff, and you don't worry about cybersecurity. But as soon as you get on the airplane, you start worrying about cybersecurity. So we work really hard to make sure it is secure. So it's more secure than what you do right now in these rooms as you're doing your emails and all the other stuff you're doing on your phones.
And as the owner of your own network, have you seen an increase in potential cyber attacks over the last 5 years or so?
Not really, no. I mean,
really?
No. It's like I said, we're such a small part of the ecosystem where people are trying to hack. They're not trying to hack into us usually. They're trying to hack into, banks and things like get credit card numbers and that kind of stuff, which a lot of that stuff doesn't go over our network because we don't do a lot of, financial transactions.
James, should we worry about data hacking, high net worth individuals on aircraft?
Yes, you should. You should be concerned about it, but like Gogo, Viasat, we own and operate our network end to end. And I think it's probably true for everybody up here. The networks are probably not the problem. Your problem is that rogue device that you bring onto the aircraft. If it's infected, if you've got a virus on your laptop or a phone, as an ISP and a service provider to the U.S. government, we could see that, but it would be a little big brotherish for us to give you a call and say, did you know you've got an infected device on your network?
But that wouldn't be a hostile attack, would it, by definition, if the device was on board, would it? It's
somebody's hostile attack, right? I mean, we see incredible numbers of DNS or direct, denial of service type attacks on the network that we're able to stop. But someone put that on there as a hostile attack. It doesn't necessarily look like a hostile attack.
Okay.
Maybe that's the question you're asking.
Lupita, is this a growing threat, do you think?
I don't think it's a growing threat, but it's a threat that we need to be aware of. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the companies that we work with actually have their own IT department. They're becoming more aware. So the IT departments are getting more involved in what the passengers are bringing into the airplane.
But there have been some spectacular failures, haven't there? Not necessarily in aviation, but in general business, where IT departments have not been enough to defend huge corporations sometimes.
Yeah, I think also mainly a lot of that's because they're not aware. I mean, that has really not been their role.
Yeah.
IT department from a company usually doesn't get involved in the IT department of their airplane hangar. So I think having a lot of more of that involvement and making sure that the aircraft is secure in terms of cyber attacks, I think it's one of their growing responsibility. I think same thing as my colleagues are saying is that a lot of it is the user being aware of it. One of the things that concerned about cyber attack that people are always worried about is the aircraft itself, but the cockpit connectivity is very separated from the passenger connectivity. So in terms of getting the plane, impacting where the plane is going to fly, it's a whole separate domain.
Okay, thank you. Bill Rowell?
I think the security starts at home.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
It starts at home. It used to be aircraft technicians had an A&P license. Well, now they need to have a technology, an internet license, or a computer license to go ahead and get things going, because the aircraft really just becomes a node on the business network or the personal network if you're at home. So that you really got to start at home. The cockpit and the cabin are segregated, two completely separate systems. Like Kale makes sure of that. And again, I don't think it's become worse. I think we just become more aware.
Greg, you share that view?
Yeah, I do. But in addition, our particular network, I'm not sure about Viasat and Inmarsat, like we're SOC 3 compliant, which is the same standard that the Department of Defense uses and Amazon Web Services uses. So that's where third-party auditors are coming in and making sure our network is secure. So that's, I think, a primary component. The other piece is like we partner with Satcom Direct, who has some very sophisticated security tools. Jared opened up talking about that. So when you combine those two things, you really do have a total solution. But I'll let Jared talk more about their solution.
So we're test 1, 2, check. Test, test. So we're seeing actually increases in cyber attack each year, usually double digits as far as percentages. And that's just, keeping track of how many attacks and things. So I think that the reality of that is that it's just going to continue to increase over the years. As far as what we do to address hacking and cybersecurity, first we start with coming out to the aircraft, medium flight departments. Our cybersecurity team comes out and does an audit. They identify risks, ways to mitigate that, which level of security and what they want to do to address those. Then after that, we have, like he was saying, several different tools where we can proactively monitor the threats on the aircraft. And then if we do identify those, there's a whole process that takes place after that. So for instance, if we identified a rogue laptop on an aircraft a few months ago, we messaged the pilots through data link to let them know about what's going on with that. And then our cyber team goes through and does a complete report on that, assesses the threats, and then they pass that over to the security folks at that business. So in those ways, we can usually identify them, shut them off, stop the threats and things. And so it's ever changing too. But those are good ways to adapt.
A clear and present danger, or something that's developing as time unwinds? So from my
everybody likes to hype it and make a big deal about it. I just say the reality is that we all have to think that all of these electronic devices that we have are targets, and that there's certain steps that have to be taken to protect them. But I wouldn't say that it's worthy of all the hype that some people like to sensationalize things and things like that. It's just a reality nowadays, and we've seen that really transition over the last couple of years. Everybody thinks about security; it has to be thought about, and we're going to have to continue thinking that way into the future.
Thank you for not using the words sensational and journalist in the same sentence. I think we'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your questions. We've had a wide-ranging conversation from cybersecurity to pricing to network to technical developments. I'd like to thank our panel on your behalf: Jim Zanino from Gogo Business Aviation, Lupita Wilson from Collins Aerospace, James Pearson from Viasat, Bill Rowell from Inmarsat, Gregg Malakoff from Intelsat, and James Maynard from Satcom Direct. Thank you for sharing your views, and thank you to you for your questions.